Today, we are diving into the topic of money and women. I've noticed a rise in this conversation over the past few years, and for good reason. Traditionally, I think there hasn't been a high percentage of women who are comfortable with handling, discussing, earning, or even having a healthy relationship with money for a whole multitude of reasons. Thankfully, there are more and more resources and support for women to gain financial literacy and to find a path to success in this area. My guest today, Kalee Boisvert, has been in the financial industry for over 15 years. Growing up herself in a single parent household, she watched her mom struggle with finances and wished there was something she could do to help. She also realized she needed to find her own way to save and earn if she wasn't going to allow her circumstances to define her. And so her own journey into financial literacy and wealth management began. Kalee chose to become a financial advisor to empower and support people to put an end to their money related stress. Kalee has two books being released in 2023, a children's picture book called Moneywise Mabel's Bursting Bank. That sounds so interesting. And a nonfiction book called Make Money Your Thing, which aims to build confidence and empower people in their financial lives. Welcome, Kalee. I know we're going to talk a little bit about your book today, so I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim, for having me on.
Yeah, I'm happy you've joined me today to talk about money and not just money, but how we as women have formed some really unhealthy mindsets and how those mindsets have held many of us back and really how important it is to unpack and to start to heal and redefine our relationship with money. And I'm excited. I think that's what I want to dig into a lot today as we talk with that kind of being the foundation, because I feel like many of us have that issue at some point in our journey. So I know you have a story around money. I know that, I've just given a little snippet in the intro there, but I want to know, Kalee, first off, growing up, what significant events really do you feel shaped your own views and your belief system when it comes to money?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's so powerful going back to like early money stories for everyone. And it's something that I kind of like to explore with clients or people I talk to about money. But you're right. Like, so my like start or beginning, it was almost like a love-hate relationship. So I was raised by a single mom and money was really the source of stress. And, we lived in subsidized housing. My mom couldn't afford oftentimes like the things like back to school clothing and whatnot, like for us as, kids. And so it was kind of like it felt really like unfair, and I didn't like to see that it was like such a heavy burden for her to carry, and she did so much. Like, she worked so hard and did an amazing job. But again, it was really hard seeing that, and it was like, as a young child, you want like nothing more than to like help, or like any way you can. And at that time I was, probably like 7 years old or something, so there really wasn't much I could do. And I felt really powerless in my ability to do anything and to help. But I think it's like
Mhm.
that sort of planted the seed that I knew I wanted to do something at some point, and that led to what I'm doing today. But so that was kind of the hate aspect of it, is just seeing the stress it caused my mom. But then with that came like me as this like quiet introvert. I was also like really always like keen on kind of observing my surroundings, and I would see
Mhm.
that not everyone was going through that same, the stress, that struggle. And it seemed like, other kids had the stuff that I really wanted. And so it was like interesting for me. So I thought like, wow, money was something maybe I needed to figure out. I needed to learn more, because there was something to this money thing, and if I figured it out, maybe that would change things. And so that
Yeah.
was kind of the other side of it, was that like intrigue of like, what could I do? And early on when I was in those days, what I remember asking my mom for a Super Nintendo, and that kind of changed a lot at that point, because usually her answer or response would be like, no, I can't afford that. You're not getting that. But this time, instead, I think she was tired of, I don't know, maybe I was asking for it a lot or something, but she said, okay, fine. If you want it so bad, buy it yourself. And it was just like so mind blowing for me at that moment of like, oh, that wasn't a no, that in a child's mind, you're like, that's a yes. And so
There's
you're
a
just like,
way to do this. Yeah.
yeah. So you're like, I just have to figure out how. And then it just
Hmm.
became, okay, I need to earn my own money. Make sure, if I'm getting birthday presents, I'll make sure I tell people, just give me money because I'm saving for this, and finding like odd jobs. And I would go with my sister on her like babysitting gigs. I think I was like 9 or 10, and help her for like a split of the whatever she was getting paid and whatnot. And she was very nice to let me come along. So did everything I could, and like was socking it away in my little tin can in my closet, my hiding spot. And I did it. Like I saved up enough on my own fully to buy that Super Nintendo. And it felt amazing. Like the feeling I had was this like triumph, like I can do anything. And so money didn't seem like this problem anymore, or this like negative thing. It was like, oh, possibilities, and I can
Mm.
change things, I can make it happen. And so doing that and going through that, it was just one thing after another. Then it was when I was about to turn 16 and I wanted a car more than anything. And so I worked 2 jobs. I was working like at that summer, I was working at Subway and Dairy Queen, and like doing double shifts. Like I'd start my day at Subway, end my day at Dairy Queen. And by the end of the summer, I had enough to buy that car. And so it was just one thing after another. And it was, again, so empowering. It felt so good. And then it was like, how can I share this with other people to know that, hey, this is possible, and money doesn't have to be the source of stress and struggle. And it can be something that's there for you, supporting you.
A
And so that was
tool.
more of the like positive and side of money, and what I wanted to then start sharing with other people. And so that was kind of the beginning. So it started out maybe a lot of negativity, but switched it into a positive and seeing like what I could do.
Yeah, that's such a great story. I mean, I completely hear what you're saying, and it breaks my heart in the beginning to hear of the seeds that were planted. And of course, your mom doing just what she had to do and the best she knew how to do. There's certainly no blame there, but the seeds that you received and were planted in your heart and your mind about money, you had to make an intentional effort to overcome those things. And I'm going to say you are one of the people that did go down that road of, okay, how can I use this to my benefit? You started realizing, but not everybody's done that. And I think today that's what we're going to try and unpack, is how to undo some of those mindsets that women have in terms of just what they've seen growing up. And no 7-year-old should have to bear that kind of weight, right? Of how can I help? So the fact that you took the path you did is amazing. And that's such a great outcome of that difficult situation. Your mom was a single mom. You've also talked about being a single mom. So, and I've actually myself spent 17 years as a single parent. So we are not alone. Like we're referencing 3 people here. There's so many single parents and people that are under a lot of financial pressure or circumstances. What do you think is your message to women who've had to balance everything on their shoulders and just feel probably just really overwhelmed with, how do I even make a change here? What do I do?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I'm a single mom, raised by a single mom, and I work with a lot of women who are independent financially, single moms, and have gone through divorce and things like that. And yeah, yourself as well. Like, so it is a really common experience. And
Mhm.
so I think it's just kind of normalizing that, because I think there is a lot of feeling like you're different or alone in that circumstance or scenario. And knowing that, it's not like you're not by yourself. And I hope people know that. Because it can feel really like you have the whole weight of the world on your shoulders, and it's like, what am I going to do? And there's those scary moments. Like, I think we need to talk about that probably more as well, because I think when it relates to money, like, we really hide it, and it could be like very shameful almost. But like, there's scary moments as single mom when, like, I remember growing up with my mom, it was like at the grocery store, we didn't have a credit card because she was like so anti credit cards, but she would use checks sometimes to pay for the groceries. And the reason being was like, it would take a few more days to clear. And so if she didn't have enough money in the bank account and knew like a paycheck was coming up. And so just like things like that. Like I can't even imagine the fear of like not necessarily like not knowing if you can feed your family or have enough for the week to like keep the lights on or something. Like
Yeah,
that's scary. And I think we need to acknowledge that like as single moms, single parents, we have to deal with some really scary moments when it comes to money and finances. And
absolutely.
yeah, and maybe being able to talk about it more will help or will kind of like shed some sort of stigma. Cause I went through it too. Like when I was just had my daughter and I left my job because it was, you know, some of the stuff that was happening was awful. And so I was like, screw this, like I've put up with enough. But then it was like, oh, like I was no longer the single person just having to look out for me. I was now no job and I had a
Yeah,
child. And so, I mean, that in itself was a motivating factor. But at the same time, it was like almost like a fear motivation too of like, if I don't succeed, if I don't do this right, I can't keep a roof over my head. And of course, like I knew I could go, you know, stay with my mom or with a family member, but it's just I think there's like that almost like fierce independence or again you don't want to like talk about or you don't want to share maybe of like that personal battle you're going through because it's like you feel like a failure like you're not
yeah,
doing it or succeeding as a parent because like as a parent we have enough like oh we got to do it all and be the best parent and then like we got to
yeah.
also run the finances and stuff so I think we have to acknowledge that there's like really
Mm.
scary moments and maybe talk about them more be there for each other so we know we're not alone that reminder that we're not alone and then I hope like we can look at it almost too as like a season because and maybe it's longer than a traditional season but knowing that like you can do this you can get through this and this doesn't dictate the rest of your whole financial lives like that was my experience growing up that whole money as a source of struggle and it was really hard for a long time for us but then you know my mom got like a good job later on in my teen years and my mom is now retired she has her house fully paid off like from that start to like where she is now too it's like you don't have to give up on those goals or think that you can't succeed I have
Exactly.
clients that share similar stories that they were single mom and they would just do what they could like maybe they were putting away like $25 a month towards their retirement to start out because that's all they could handle at the time when their kids were young and you're paying for childcare and all that but then they did that they did what they could and then as things progressed and maybe some of the child costs went down a little bit and childcare and things like that, then they start to increase it gradually. And then it was $50 a month and 100. And then at a point where now they're again in a place where they can still retire and be, you know, go after their goals. So I think that's a reminder too that don't think that it necessarily you know, decides then what the future holds for you. Like there's still all the possibilities and the things you can still achieve as a single parent. So I would hope
I
to,
yes.
yes, that
I
all single
love
parents can
I
believe in
love that you
themselves.
brought that up because I so agree with you that just because like we hear the downside a lot of times of single parenting and the struggle and they're very real. I've been through it myself too, like without a home, bankrupt, with a baby, no place, no car, no job. I mean, talk about rock bottom. That was
Scary.
difficult days for me. And you're right but that fear we have a choice. Are we going to let that fear take over and rule our situation? Or are we going to allow hope and possibility to be a part of it as well and just keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing what we're able to do? I really appreciate that message. But yeah, just because there's a really difficult situation doesn't mean there's no hope that your mom is living today, like you said, house paid off, she's doing well, you're doing well, you've come, not that there aren't hard days, but you're flourishing in the midst of all this. I ended up flourishing in the midst. I just kept going, and the hope that maybe somebody will hear us talk about today will be enough to maybe put them in a place to just go to tomorrow, get to tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new day. Today's a new day. So I really appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah.
I
And I
have,
guess too, just
yes,
like don't discount those skills you have, right? Like as single moms and stuff, when they're like single moms are superheroes, you're like, heck yes, they are. Like when you realize all the stuff you're doing and balancing and juggling, like know that translates too to like the success and what you can do. Like you do some like hard days, right? The days where you're like up all night because your kids are sick or whatnot, and then you have to show up at a meeting. And
That's
so
right.
I think like don't forget those skills are very much like transferable and they're going to lead to success in other areas too. So give yourself credit for the hard work you do because it's going to pay off, I believe.
Such a good point. If there's any employers out there listening, hire a single mom. Probably don't reach you're getting with resiliency and
Yeah,
balancing a whole lot of things. So that's, yeah, it's a good point to remember for sure.
exactly.
Why do you think the subject of money has been somewhat taboo for women? Like, why do you think this has been so difficult to have a really candid conversation about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's probably like a variety of things that contribute to that, but what comes to mind is things like us showing up almost with like an imposter syndrome, like not feeling like we're serious contenders or something like that, right? Like when I envisioned like success or wealthiness, I see still like some like guy like this vision goes to it's like us, or when I think of investing in stock markets, my mind goes to this table of dudes sitting around and throwing across ideas of different stocks and
Isn't
talking.
that interesting?
Yeah. And it's just like, that's so weird. And where does that come from? And so it's almost like, as women, it's like we don't feel like we belong at the table and we don't think that we're like, we don't take ourselves serious as like smart investors and serious earners. Like we almost like discount it and go like, oh, well, I don't make as much or something like that. And I would say to all women, like, it's your money and you have to really stand in your power of like this is important and this matters to me and my opinion and I am in this space as well. So I think it's like allowing us to be in that space or pushing ourselves into that space. It might be uncomfortable, and that's why I try in my business to create more of a welcoming space when it comes to that, where your mind doesn't go to that vision of like a table full of dudes or whatnot, that women belong, that women can ask anything and feel comfortable. So I think, that's part of it. And as women, it's almost like we're those like innate qualities that are appreciated in us is like being kind and generous to others and wanting to help others. We help our children, we help our families. So money's not good or bad. We don't have to say like or attach that, like it's whatever we attach to it. So we can love money for being the tool that brings us joy, that brings us adventure, that
Mhm.
opens doors to more possibilities and the things that we want in life. So that's all I mean with money. It's more like an energetic thing of like loving what it allows us to do. And so that's okay. And
Yeah.
as women, if we can do that and put ourselves more in that place, maybe it's easier then to say things like I love money, to feel more confident, like you said, and feel like we belong
Yeah.
in this space. And we
Yeah.
can talk
Using
about it and we can be part of the conversation.
exactly. And yeah, keeping that money as a tool in our minds and what that really means. I like what you said about the visual of having yourself at the table instead of having a bunch of just men around the table. And I think that lends itself to how the marketing around some of these things have been effective, right? Where we see men imagery of men around a table and there is a void of women, and I think that has also played a factor. So just even visualizing ourselves being able to be at the table. Picture yourself. I can be at that table. Why can't I? So
Yeah,
I think even
absolutely.
just that alone is powerful, just to redefine. And even I'm hoping we can see even more and more imagery of women being at the table and effective and a having a voice in that conversation. I think that's really, really important. So that has to do with some of the inner work. And I know you talk about this in your book, and I think
Mhm.
it's a really important part. How do you help women address the shame or a mindset that's keeping them from building a healthy relationship? Because we can talk about it and say, well, this exists, but how do we actually get ourselves to a point where we can maybe redefine our habits or our thoughts around this?
You're right. Like it does exist, and so we can't deny that. And that's why I called the book Make Money Your Thing, because women are infamous for saying things like, I'm not good at math, I'm not good with numbers, money just isn't my thing. And so I would call it Make Money Your Thing, because you can make it your thing. Like we don't have to say that. My daughter, who's like 8 years old, the other day said, I'm not good at math. And I was like, what? Like she's actually really good at math. It's one of like her top, like my mind's always blown that she knows how to just solve things without even getting much instruction on it. And so I'm just like, what is happening? Like, how is this still occurring? How does someone who is actually great with math and has this mom who's always like rah numbers finance still say that? Like, holy man, we need to do a lot of work if this is what's still happening with women. So there's so much like of that inner work to be done that is, I don't know if it's socialized or I don't know where it comes from, but it's still somehow innately there, and it's evidenced in those statements that we still hear people say of like, I'm not good with this, and so there's obviously work to be done. So I think that's like step one of, if you're wanting to build confidence and change your relationship with money, step one is doing the inner work. And that's why it's part one of my book, is that inner work. But it is going just to be like consciously aware each time those things come up, because maybe my daughter
Yep.
wasn't aware, being young and hearing herself say that, but I was aware, and I now being more aware when I say things. Like I walked into the grocery store the other day and the flowers were displayed right there, and they were like $60 for like a bunch of flowers, and I was like, that's absurd, why would anyone buy them? And it was just like, that's still like a money scarcity or something coming up. Like I stop and I'm like, wow, like I'm sure many women or people, love to buy flowers, whether it's for themselves or others, and they're
Hmm.
beautiful and they light up the room. Like I can change that mindset instead, and say those
Wow.
things, and say to myself, I like spending money on myself in other ways. Maybe it's like going for a massage or a spa day or something like that. So it's just pausing each time you notice it coming up in your life, that like inner money dialogue or money beliefs, and just decide, like pause and just be aware of it, and then decide, like, is this, what I want to move forward with believing? Is this of my like conscious choosing? Because a lot of our money beliefs are almost put on us through others. You'll find like probably messaging from your parents coming up and things like that, and so you get to decide, like, okay, do I want to keep believing that? Do I think it's, moving me towards more of a positive money mindset, or do I think it's moving me towards more of a negative? And a lot of the things, like the inner dialogue for me even, comes across quite negative, where I now, okay, pause and change that and look at it a different way. And so
Yeah.
I would really welcome women to do that. And journaling would help with that too, like writing
Mm.
down some of those beliefs you have about money from your childhood, from your, what you learned from your parents or other like people around you at the time, or even now what you've heard and learned. And then like look at each one and actually decide, like, do I want to believe this, or do I want to get rid of this and replace it with something else? Like, and then you get to consciously choose what you're wanting
Yeah.
to believe about money. And when it's a
Yeah.
conscious choice, you can really change that dialogue, the inner dialogue. And from that, you're more in a space then to feel good about having these conversations. Because if you're still hung up on this money baggage and you go to talk to a financial professional or anything, it's not going to help, because you're still kind of stuck with all those like money wounds or almost like money trauma that do some of that inner work and then show up a lot differently of like who I want to be with money and my financial life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know growing up, we can maybe sometimes discount what we take from our parents. There's such a thing as a poverty mindset where we can really be looking at our situation and think, well, I've got money in the bank. I've got this. I've got, I may be doing very well financially, but I'm still maybe collecting those old margarine containers in my food pantry, because you just never know. I might need those one day. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing that in and of the action of doing it, but where's the mindset around that? Is it, I'm going to run out? I need to, you know, hoard things, or I need to, like, there's so many things attached to that kind of mindset. And again, it comes paying attention to what comes out of your mouth, like you said. Maybe that's just a simple step we can leave people with today is pay attention to what's coming out of your mouth.
Yep.
Some things maybe you've said for 30, 40 years and you're not even aware of it until you start paying attention and think, is that serving me or is that actually limiting me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. How long did it take you to actually get over some of these things?
I'm still working on it. Like, so, like, I don't know if that's, like, helpful to people or like, "Oh, no."
No, I
Um,
think it's honest and I think it's real and
yeah,
yeah.
it takes a lot because it's ingrained. It's like, our brain, like, there's all sorts of things behind that saying, like, our brain just makes shortcuts and now will automatically kinda go that way, right? It's the whole subconscious mind,
Yep.
and you can listen to all different studies on the brain to know that, but so it's so ingrained in us and automatic that we have to make a conscious effort, and I find myself when I'm not, being making a conscious effort, I will go back to old patterns. So I have to be consciously aware to actually change it to make a new pathway or, a new habit of what I want to believe. So I find myself, if I do feel like I'm going that direction, I'll listen to like an abundance meditation on YouTube, or I'll write it, like I'll journal about what's coming up for me. And so I have those tools that I will reach to and access, which are helpful for me because I really want that, abundance and like great mindset, especially when I'm going into like my meetings with my clients and things like that. Like, I need to make sure I'm in the right headspace too. So we all are going to have like the good and bad days with money and finances. There's never going to be perfect. There's going to be times where all of a sudden it's like you're getting hit for like with random bills and things coming at you and you're like, what is going on? And you can fall back into those again, those bad beliefs or negativity, and that's what you'll probably want to like revert to. But if you can stop and just be like, this is just one of those times, and I'm lucky that I have saved up an emergency fund, or I'm really blessed that I'm at a place now where it's okay and I can make that payment, or whatever it is that helps you kind of get outside of that. And a big one that helps if you're really struggling and can't find kind of the positive in it is just going to gratitude. So just looking around yourself
Mm,
and finding what can you be grateful for. And we have so much that we are or can be grateful for, like
yeah.
around us right now. Like, you can just be
Perspective's
grateful for
huge.
like, yeah, the sunshine that's outside that just makes you feel great, or a nice summer day where you can go for a walk. Like, there's so much to be grateful for.
Yeah, no matter what situation you find yourself in today, somebody is having a worse time.
Yeah.
Somebody is struggling and that's not a good thing either, but just to know perspective wise that you there's always hope. There's always that the greener pastures are
Yeah.
ahead, right? Again,
Yeah.
it's that I'm so thankful. I may be struggling here, but I'm so thankful I have my family or I have, a job or a
Yeah.
house to live in, or even if it's not a house, a condo or
Yeah.
whatever, a basement suite. You have a
Yeah.
roof over your
Great.
head, something to
Exactly.
be thankful for.
Yeah,
There may be
absolutely.
somebody listening today that maybe this is foreign, like a completely foreign thought around money. And maybe they've been through a really difficult situation like a divorce or even death. And maybe there's some women out there, and I know there are, that have very little experience or maybe no experience dealing with money. Maybe their partner dealt with money the whole time and now they're gone and they find themselves in a really, really difficult situation. What do you want to say to somebody who finds themselves there? Because that's, again, we talked a little bit about rock bottom for each of us, but
Yeah.
maybe somebody's at rock bottom. What do you want to tell them?
That's a great question. And absolutely, like, just what I would suggest is that be patient with yourself. Um, it might take some time, and that's okay. And if you can have that patience and know that, it's can change, things can be different. Stay engaged. So don't ever just kind of fully like throw your hands in the air and just give up and be like, this is hopeless, and just kind of decide to then ignore it, right? Because we don't want to be ignoring our money or our finances. Wherever you're at, it's still important and it matters. So yes, the patience, stay engaged, stay involved. Don't just completely, take yourself away from the situation. go slow, like, as well as that being patient. Just know that, again, like you're saying, if it's divorce or like a loss of a loved one who is managing the finances or kind of keeping everything together, and then if that person's no longer there, that's really scary and a lot to take on, other than even the emotional stuff and everything you're going through with that loss.
Right.
So just be patient, go slow, and just say, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get to a place. It might take some time, and that's okay. And, today this is what I'm going to do to make myself, move in one step. Like, maybe I'm going to journal about my feelings and what is going on with some of the inner dialogue, or I'm going to take a look at my debt and just get an understanding of where I stand, because I want to get rid of my debt. And, that's what I'm going to do today, is just understand how much it is. And then I'll make a plan to deal with it. Like, just take that one step, take it slow. It's a process.
Yeah.
We always want things to come really fast. I know, like, and that's where we're at with our culture. It's that instant gratification. But
Hmm.
some, like, money goals, whether you're in a good spot or a bad spot, are going to take like years or decades to achieve. So taking it slow, being patient, knowing like each step you do is compounding in the right direction, right? We talk about compounding all the time in the world of
Hmm.
finance. So every activity, every step you take is compounding for that bigger picture, or the bigger goals that you're working towards. So know that, like, even taking it slow, being patient is still okay. You're making progress. And get help if you need, if that's going to, like, help you on your way. Like, we don't have to do it alone. And I think, we talk about single moms and things like that, and oftentimes we just go to, like, I'll just do it all myself. And
Hmm.
that's maybe like the response we just sort of quickly decide on, is like, I am all alone, I have to figure this out. But you're not. Like, there's money coaches out there, there's debt counselors, there's financial advisors, like, there's so
There
many
is help.
people. Yeah, there
Yeah.
is help. And don't think that, you know you're not in a place to get, like, oftentimes people won't reach out for the help because they're so still in that shame, or like, I don't feel good about it, I'm not going to talk to someone about it. Like, they have to feel like, well, I
Or
have to first do
pride.
this and this, and then I will. But it's like, no, no, like, don't do that and put yourself through more torture. Like, get the help at the point where you feel this way the most, or you're really struggling. Don't wait.
Yeah.
And again, there's probably a different person or professional or good fit. Maybe it's even just a friend to be like your accountability partner, someone you really trust.
Yeah, and to find somebody who will understand, like you, me. There's lots of people out there.
Yeah.
You may look at somebody and go, "Wow, they really have it all together. They just look like they don't have any issues. They've got, everything's going well for them." But chances are, at some point in their life and journey, they've gone through hard times, and you just need to find that person or people that has that understanding and empathy and can help you exactly with just that next step.
Yeah,
Is it ever too
absolutely.
late to address money issues?
No, it's never too late. Like, it doesn't matter what stage of your life. I talk to people in all different ages, stages of life, and we still are like, okay, let's figure out, what do you want to do? What are the goals you want to achieve? And we work towards it. So it's never too late. But I would say always, like, address it today instead of tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Don't put it off another week or another year. And um anyone will say that too when it comes to finances, is like, that's the, like, biggest regret. If you want to know the biggest regret I hear from people, is that they wish they would have started sooner. They would have, like, wish they would have taken action sooner. So knowing that is the biggest regret, start today. It doesn't matter where you are, start today, start now.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. How do you coach women who have experienced maybe really big money mistakes? Like, I know we've all made mistakes with money, but what if something really catastrophic has happened? I'm trying to address a lot of the barriers here for women
Yes.
today that may stop them from moving forward. But because I think fear is a
That's
big
a big
part of
one.
this equation, and fear of making the same mistake twice, or, you've been stung once. Now I'm just going to sit still and I'm not going to do anything going forward that's even, any kind of risk. How do
Yeah.
you deal with that with women?
Yeah, that's a big one. You're right. So I think it's the reminder that, first off, I like to say it's not mistakes, they're lessons. So can we look at everything we've done as a lesson? Because there's so much we can learn from the things that have happened. And perfection is not a prerequisite to being wealthy, to succeeding, to being a millionaire or multimillionaire or having the dream job, whatever your goal is. It doesn't take perfection to get there. So by no means think like, oh, like I made this mistake in the past, like I'm, doomed or something like that. Like,
It's
no.
over. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
these are experiences, they're lessons. Money's part of everyday life. Like we have decisions to make with money probably on a daily basis of like, buy this, don't buy this, go on this trip, don't go on this trip, put this on your credit card, don't put this on your credit card, or so every day. So how can you like be perfect? That's crazy to think that you can be perfect and to put that pressure on yourself. Mistakes are going to happen. Absolutely. But it's just deciding that you're going to have the resilience to just move past them and say, instead of looking at it as a mistake, it's a lesson. And I have a whole chapter on this in my book as part of the inner work, is turning those money mistakes in quotations to money lessons, and what's the knowledge we can get out of that. And I've done stupid things with money too. Like I talk about in the book, I was like, in my early 20s, me and my girlfriends were in Vegas. We met these guys from like London and we thought it was true love. So we all just wanted to quickly go to London to see them. And we all just put it on our credit card. Like we didn't have the funds to be just booking a trip, the very next week or whatever it was. And I'm like, well, that's not really smart. And it didn't turn out to be true love at all. Like there was nothing there. And so it was just us girls like left there, heartbroken in London. And so it's like I say the money lessons go through like a kind of 3-step process. So if you could journal about it, it's like, what is the event? So that was the event for me. And then what is like the lesson, or how can you kind of shift the perspective or look at it differently? And I was like, well, it was a great opportunity to go on a trip with my girlfriends, because it's hard to just go out on a whim on a trip now when I have 2 young kids. So it was a great, fun trip. And then find the gratitude too as like the 3rd step in this process. So the gratitude was like, I'm so blessed and grateful that I had like great girlfriends to do that with, and we were all in it together, and so we all kind of had the same outcome, and we were there to console each other. And we made it to Paris. We got to see the Eiffel Tower. So it's just a fun girls trip. So it was,
You
kind
have
of
a great
stupid.
story out of it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like, well, that's stupid to just put a trip to meet some guys. Like as the mom in me would be like, okay, that sounds like a stupid idea.
Yeah, I'm sure you
But
have a different perspective now and comments
yes,
about that.
yes, but we do things at any age. So it doesn't have to be in your early 20s. It could be you're in your 50s and did something you regret with money. Like it doesn't matter
Yeah.
when it happens either. It's just, again, it's lessons. We're all going to go through those. I wish I could protect everyone from mistakes. Like I wish I could go there and like stop people and be like, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. I'm sure we all do. And that's probably what we do as parents and to people in our lives. But sometimes it's just those situations have to happen and something comes out of it. And maybe it's something good and positive and something
Yeah.
learned that's going to help us build to the next stage or step or wherever we're going next.
Yeah, I like that you have redefined the word mistake with lesson, because, and again, I framed the question with mistake.
Yeah.
And I think just always resorting back to a lesson, because a lesson we can learn from. Now, if we keep repeating, we get on that treadmill and we keep repeating the same, I'm going to
Lesson.
call them mistakes, and we don't take it as a lesson, then that's another issue. But if we
Yes.
learn from it, we can adjust. We're human. We're going to continually have these kinds of things happen, but this is where resiliency comes in, and that self-talk of, okay, that really set me back. That was not wise for whatever reason, but again, there is tomorrow. There is I can come out of this in some way, shape, or form. So
Absolutely.
agreed. As we are kind of wrapping up our conversation, I know you've shared some really good steps. I know you had steps from our last question there, but anything else you want to share in terms of practicality and how a woman listening can, she's taking in all this great information. What can she do now? Or can you suggest a next step, or, how they can even start to think about setting themselves up for success in this
Absolutely.
area of
That's
money?
great. You're right. Like, how do we execute what next? So you're feeling like, okay, I got this. Hopefully, a little bit more inspired when it comes to your money. So, what's next is like, do the inner work. Like, I do stress that. Again, I think we could all use to some of that, the inner work and what we find. And again, just to help get yourself in a good spot. If you already feel like you're like, I'm feeling good, I'm in a great spot to get going on this, then great. Maybe you don't need to do the inner work. And then when you're ready to like get going, I think it's an awareness piece. We all really need to have that reality check of understanding, where am I with my finances? So, how much money do I make? How much money do I spend? What do I have? Like that net worth. If you can take some time, and there's resources online about like how to go about this. Again, perfection is not required when it comes to understanding these things. You can just kind of go through, whether it be with a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet, but getting an awareness, because so many people just don't know where they even are at. So take some time to understand where you are at, because I'm all about the goal planning and goal setting, which is great. But so we have the goals, but step one is always going to be, where are you now, right? If you want to get
Yep.
to this early retirement or whatever, or like buying a house, that's great. But where are you starting from? And that's where you want to get to. And now we plan how to get there. So
It's like building a house, right? You want to get your
exactly.
foundation right.
Exactly. So get your
Yep.
foundation, get the awareness in place. Give your money, you're going to probably have to give your money more time and attention than you ever have, because there's a good chance up until this point, maybe you gave it like almost none. Let's have that reality check too, of like, how much money do you spend giving back to your money? We spend so much time earning it. We put a lot of work and effort into it, but how much time are we giving to our money? And I would say not enough. So I talk about this in the book, but schedule yourself a money date, put it in your calendar. It's like non-negotiable. When you have it in your calendar as an event, you're going to spend 1 hour next Tuesday just looking at your expenses and getting an understanding of it. Or you're going to spend 1 hour having a conversation with your partner about your goals, their goals, and come to a place where you feel really good about the communication and that you're both on the same page, or whatever it is. But schedule this non-negotiable time, and then set that recurring when you start kind of getting the hang of it. So you're going to have to give your money time and attention. And don't ever fully give up control. This is a big one for women. Like, do stay engaged, do spend the time with this. It is time well spent and well invested when you're doing things for your money or your financial life. And you might have a partner, and they might kind of take the lead on stuff, but I think it's so important as women, we have to stay engaged. We have to be part of the conversation.
Yes.
And so have that be your priority too, of like, that you're going to be a part of this. Even if someone else is kind of going to take the lead or do some of the day-to-day, that's fine, divide and conquer, but you still want to be in the know. And as women, I think that one's so important, because so often I see it on the other end when something hasn't worked out, and then they're left sort of feeling really
Yeah.
like they're almost like drowning in everything, because they weren't an active participant. So do what you can to be an active participant, stay in the know. Even if you're going to work with a financial advisor, it's same goes to that you're still part of the conversation. So those are some steps that you can take right away that will set you up for success, set you up for making money your thing, because it's possible for everyone.
It is. It is. And those are great steps. And what we'll do is we'll have some of those steps and some resources, and we'll share some links, as well as how you can get in touch with Kalee and get a hold of her book, and really dig in. And we just want to encourage you, if you're listening today and you've heard some things and you think, oh my goodness, I've really missed the boat here. We're telling you, you haven't. You can start now. There's ways of moving forward. There's ways to making up ground. And I hope that this conversation has inspired you. If this is an area where you've been stuck and you feel like you just don't know where to go, this is a great starting point. So this has been so fantastic, Kalee. I really hope that someone listening, and I am full confidence that somebody is going to take this information and run with it, and
Yes,
improve this area of money in their lives. And
absolutely.
I just want to thank our listeners for tuning in and joining us today. And until next time, have a fantastic day.
Thank you.